Welcome back into the Pig Trail Show. I'm Evan Kamiko, joined alongside Kevin McPherson in this week's Hog Hoops Report. Kevin, the biggest news, let's jump right into it without further delay. Trevon Brazile announcing that he's coming back to the Hill and will be playing for John Calipari and the Arkansas Razorbacks in 2024-2025. What do you make of this big news?
Well, I mean, you've got a player that dropped that withdrew from the NBA draft consideration, got out of the portal to come back to Arkansas. So you've got one player in retention in terms of someone that's been with the Razorbacks program. We know Calipari brought three players with him for Kentucky. So I think in a couple of ways you're getting some cross measures in terms of continuity in your program. So from that standpoint, but bigger than that, Evan, I thought it was a position of need. I thought Arkansas, the weakest part of when you looked at 8 guys, all solid players, really talented, Arkansas needed someone that could play the 4 and help at the 5, be kind of versatile that way, and then be a complement to your 2 5-spot guys in Jonas Adu and Big Z, because Brazile, we know, can stretch the floor, efficient 3-point shooter. He's got some real face-up stuff, but he's also a rim protector, brings length and athleticism, all on the positive to elite part in terms of his measurables and athleticism. So I thought in multiple ways this was a great get or a great retention piece.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's interesting because guys that went in the portal for Kentucky think portal guys are getting a fresh start, but guys that came in Kentucky's portal are staying with Cal. Brazile gets a brand new staff and a new opportunity, but he's staying at Arkansas. So, you know, it's a little bit interesting when we circle around talking about retention, portal, and those types of things, because you've had a coaching staff change.
Yeah, and interesting again that you mentioned Brazile was in the NBA draft. Everyone thought he'd go, not really sure if he'd come back or not. You know, earlier last week it was posted by John Goodman about the whole idea of Jeff Goodman, I should say, about him going to another school, hitting the transfer portal, and then next thing you know, he's coming back to the Hill. I'm on my off day, and I'm like, whoa, this is huge news. So how do you think Brazile's going to fit into this team? You kind of mentioned it already, but it seems like he's going to be able to stretch the floor for the Hogs.
I think that's part of it, and I think the other thing is he brings this positional versatility. I said he could help at the 5, but also because of his ability to face up and play away from the basket offensively, and then being a rim protector defensively, you can play some interesting 5-out lineups with him, where he's your main big, and you can get small and spread people out and play a 5-out style. So I think, aside from a position of need, there's an element of versatility that he brings. And I could say that about a lot of players that Calipari has on this roster. I think there's a lot of positional versatility throughout. And Brazile was just the latest piece. But again, I think it shored up that front line. If you're talking about 9 guys as really what you're going to be looking at for a 2-deep rotation, that's nothing unusual about that. But I thought he filled a much needed void there, I thought, at the 4 spot.
And now, do you see Cal going out and getting anybody else for this 24-25 team, or do we think these are the 9 guys he's going to go with and maybe pick up some walk-ons as well?
I don't think there'll be actual walk-ons. I think 2 or 3 more players, maybe guys that he's telling on the front end, look, you're not going to necessarily figure into my top 2 rotation. You know, he's talked about it in terms of full scholarships, but he qualified and described that as using Pell Grant money and money earned working his camps and different things. So we'll see what he does. He may even stretch his 9 out to 10 if the right guy's available. There's still guys coming in. I mean, look at UConn. Dan Hurley, I haven't heard anything definitive on him, but if he decides to take that Lakers job, there's a lot of good players on that roster to look at. And just to this time a year ago, when Huggins was out at West Virginia kind of late in the game, Cal plucked Trey Mann, and that was a mainstay at the 4 spot for his team last year. So, you know, I wouldn't put it past him to go beyond 9 in terms of what you look at with guys he's handing out NIL money to and figuring into his 2 rotation. But if not, 2 to 3 more guys, I think they won't be what you'd think of as traditional walk-ons, but guys that maybe could help at a pinch. I still think a Kamani Johnson type of guy would be a great addition, a sort of a bowling ball at the 4 spot, a physical presence, a rebounder, blue collar, tough, and guy that you can plug him in, not necessarily even your top rotation, in situations where you just need man among boys type of effect. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if there's a Kamani Johnson out there, but backfilling these 2 or 3, I think there might be some quality Now, how do you convince some level of quality that you're not going to be getting a sweet NIL deal, and you're kind of, on the outside looking in initially anyway on a top 2 rotation role?
Yeah, only time will tell on that. Let's move on. Cal sent out an interesting tweet yesterday saying that the team, they played some pickup game. He had some meetings with them. Where is this in the overall timeline when you compare and look back to some of the other coaches here at Arkansas of how the team's progressing along? And, what excites you about that tweet? Because I'm sure a lot of Hog fans were really excited to read that the team's starting to come together and starting to build chemistry now before they can officially really start practicing down the line in August.
Well, they can start doing limited practices, and we'll see if that starts this week. They can have limited on-court practice time, and that could have actually started a couple of weeks ago when Summer Session 1 started. So there's a few things you mentioned previous staffs, Mike Anderson, and then, of course, Eric Musselman. Guys move in Memorial Day weekend, similar to when they started pouring in here. But that first week of Summer Session 1 starts immediately after Memorial Day, and usually those when it was those two regimes, you were getting into your physicals and limited on-court stuff pretty soon. This is a couple of weeks out. I mean, he said that they played pickup ball, so they're not even scrimmaging yet based on the tweet. And if you go back to Musselman, his staff, they like to put out through social media photos of guys arriving on campus, videos of Eric Patrick Musselman hugging players as they were moving into their apartments or dorm rooms. And then we started seeing videos and photos even early on from limited practice stuff. This is a little bit different. Everything's on Calipari's time frame and clock. And, his tweet stands as all that we have right now. But I think it's encouraging as we at least know he says in this, he met with the team. He met with players individually. He mentioned the pickup stuff. He talked about how big and talented and everything else that he likes, in a tweet about this group that he has. And he talked about how Arkansas is going to recruit regionally, nationally, and internationally. So he's reminding everybody that maybe he's not done just yet in terms of even this roster. And we got more recruiting to talk about when we look ahead to the next class, 2025, Evan. But the tweet was something beyond what we'd already heard and thought.
Yeah, and Kevin, you already alluded to what we're going to talk about next. I love that you brought up the whole point that Cal's, recruiting guys in-state, nationally, and internationally. You see that already on his 24 roster. But what about the 25 roster? How's that coming along? Where is he with some of these 2025 recruits?
Well, you've got one that I've seen play in person a couple of weeks ago, Malik Thomas, a top 10 rated 5-star, 6'4" guard out of the Pittsburgh area. Absolutely love his game. Reporting out that he's planning to visit Arkansas in late June. So the 25th and the 27th, later this month. Arkansas has already had a 2025 player, another guard, 6'3", Darius Acuff Jr. Out of the IMG Academy by way of Detroit. So a couple of those Midwest blue-collar big city guys, backcourt guys, have already, either have been on campus or planning to later this month. And then, of course, Arkansas has made a lot of offers to top 10 5-star guys. Just about everybody rated in that top 10 to 15 range. So it's kind of a, when you look at this, it's kind of a work in progress because the early signing period for 2025 is in November. Mm-hmm. So you're starting to see visits. You're going to see some decisions before their senior season starts, or excuse me, their senior school year starts, maybe late August. You'll see some that will still be taking visits into the fall and making decisions right up around that November early period. And then there'll be some that delay it and stretch it out. Calipari goes after a lot of 5-star guys. So I think we'll see, how deep will he go with high school recruiting in the next class? He signed 6 for this upcoming season at Kentucky, brought 3 with him, and he stopped there. He only brought 3 of those guys. And then he really looked at the portal and some retention stuff. How deep will he go? I think it depends on how many, projected one-and-done guys he thinks can really help him in a year's time. I mentioned a couple of names that would fit that. Well, there's others as well.
Yeah, I'm sure, and we will have all of that as the summer progresses, and we get some more of those names in. The last thing let's talk about today, Pro Hogs. NBA Finals is going on right now, 2 Hogs. So a Razorback is guaranteed a ring, whether that's Daniel Gafford with the Mavericks, who had a really solid game 1, in my opinion, 3 for 3 from the floor, 8 points, or Jordan Walsh, who didn't see the floor, but one of those guys is going to get a ring. What are your take on the NBA Finals?
Well, so far, we were talking about it. When I've been asked about it, I predicted Boston in 7. Great first game. If Boston plays like that and shoots like that throughout the series, it may end a lot sooner than that. But I did favor Boston. But Daniel Gafford, a fixture in the starting lineup now for the Mavs, splits time with the rookie Derek Lively at the 5 spot, has had a nice run in the playoffs. Interesting little footnote for the Olympics, potentially petitioning Slovenia for. I don't know how they do that, but they could bring him in potentially to team up with Luka in the Olympics. Team USA is already set. There's not a spot in there, but I think that's interesting. But let's not jump too far ahead. We've still got a finals to play out. Look, Dallas, outside of the series against Minnesota, where Dallas went on the road and won the first 2 games and came back home and won game 3. Aside from that series, you go back to the Clippers in the first round. You go back to Oklahoma City in the semifinals of the Western Conference, and now they've not been great in game 1s. They've looked sometimes lethargic, had some poor starts, and then they bring it up. So let's keep an eye on that. Game 2 tonight back in Boston. Then the series shifts to Dallas, and then Jordan Walsh. He's made a couple of appearances in spot duty earlier in the playoffs. He's on the active 15-man NBA Finals roster. It may take another blowout for either team for him to see the court, but I'd love to see him get some run in the NBA Finals. We know Moses Moody did that in 2 years ago in Golden State's title run against Boston, but he also had rotation minutes in the Western Conference Finals against these Dallas Mavericks. So like you said, either way, a Pro Hog's going to win a ring. It'll be the 3rd time, whichever it is, Daniel Gafford or Jordan Walsh, be the 3rd time in the last 4 NBA seasons that's been the case, going all the way back to Bobby Portis in 2020-21 with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, not too bad when you consider all things that's happened here at Arkansas in the last couple of months, where you're getting yet another Hog going to win a ring. A big thing when it comes to some of these young recruits that you're going to bring in, that, hey, maybe you might win a ring. Here's what we've done. And if you were curious, I had Boston in 5. That was my prediction for the NBA Finals. Maybe a little bold, but that's you said Boston in 7. I like that pick. And, I got a lot of friends in Boston who are very happy right now if that series ends quickly, as it looked like it was going to in game 1. Kevin, anything else before we go?
Not really. I mean, it's interesting. We're talking about Pro Hogs right now. John Calipari, to me, when I look at this roster and when I look ahead at some of the guys he's recruiting, it's just going to ramp up. The Pro Hogs are just going to ramp up. Hog fans want to see success on the court. Calipari, in 15 years at Kentucky, almost always was very successful during the regular season, pecking order in the SEC postseason tournament. There's been drop-off in postseason the last 5 years. We know that. He's going to be judged on what he does as the head coach. But, man, he's bringing in top-level players. Arkansas is going to be in the top of the leaderboard every year in recruiting, and then we're going to see that play out in terms of after college, one-and-dones, guys excelling in the NBA. There's a lot of that to look forward to as well. So I think when you look at your program, we know recruiting is kind of its own sport, but I think when you look at it, there's going to be a lot of reasons for Razorback fans to buy in more to what Calipari does, because I think the NBA game continues to get more and more popular internationally, here domestically. And if you got Pro Hogs in it, then Hog fans are going to be tuning in. And I think we're going to see a lot more on the horizon.
Absolutely, Kevin. Always a pleasure to talk to you on Sunday. We'll have plenty more of your Hogs Hoops reports coming this summer. Enjoy the summer, everybody. Kevin, that's going to do it for today. More Pig Trail Show coming up after the break.